Welcome to the Heroic Voice. It is November 8th, 2025, and I am here today with game developer and actor Scott Butler. Scott, it's nice to have you. We met, a couple of weeks ago at a convention in El Centro, California.
Yes, that's right, at Imperial Valley Entertainment Con, right?
And we were sitting across from each other, and eventually, we started talking, which was really cool. And I remember, well, I'll get to this later. You do game design, right? So let's talk about that first. This is the Heroic Voice, where I talk to comic book creators and other interesting people on a variety of subjects. I am Dennis Maloney, publisher of the Heroic Multiverse, where we feature good girl and bad girl artwork, super babes, and all kinds of Silver Agey style stories.
I got into games very young. I was 16 years old when I was offered my first game job back in '88. I'm showing my age now. I was at a computer club that I used to go to with a couple of friends, and you bring your computer over there, and a lot of people would be playing games and kind of like socializing and stuff like that. But a lot of the time I would bring in artwork that I was doing. So I would, use deluxe paint on the Amiga 500 and paint random things, sometimes sort of made up video games, things that look like games. And then I did this one hand-drawn painting of the cover of Madonna's True Blue album cover. So I had the cassette, which I quite enjoyed. I quite, like the album. And I like the picture of her. She had like the short blonde Marilyn Monroe hair. It was all sort of like black and white with a blue background. And I liked the image because she was sort of, profile with the jacket off the shoulders. And I thought it was pretty cool. So I started painting it. And then I brought it into the computer club the next week. And my friend said, "Oh, wow, that's looking really cool." And then this guy comes up to me and asks me if I have anything else. And I showed him the sort of made up video games, like, made up shoot 'em ups and sort of sci-fi games. And then he said, "Do you want a job?" And it's like, I don't know. I work at Safeway's grocery store, maybe. So I went home, told my mum. She said, "You should do it. You like art, you like games. It seems like a perfect fit for you. But I think you should finish your exams first." So I finished my O levels at school. I went to the same school that David Bowie went to, had the same music teacher he had, which was 20 years prior to me. Yeah, I started the following year and been making games ever since for the last 36 years or so.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, as an artist. And then eventually became a senior artist, then a lead artist, art director. And now I'm a technical artist, which means I sort of do all the really technical side of art setup. So making sure things look right and are performing well and, everything's sort of adhering to like the correct processes and stuff.
I assume it was the job that pulled you from the UK to the US.
Yeah, it is. It was because I was just doing games at the time, and then I came over in 2001 to see a couple of British friends who had moved out here, I think around 96, 97, to PlayStation in San Francisco, which the studio split and they opened up a San Diego studio south of them. And they opted to go down there because they thought San Diego sounds nice. And weirdly, I used to work with them at Argonaut where we did Croc and Star Fox and a whole bunch of games. I didn't work on Star Fox, but Star Fox was made there. And we had both, by happen chance, gone to PlayStation, them America, me PlayStation London. So when I came over, as I was about to come over and visit, they said, "Well, there's actually a job opening here if you want to bring a suit and just, do an interview while you're on vacation to visit us." And I said, "All right." So I packed a suit, came over, couldn't believe that the weather was nice and it was sunny and sat on a beach when it wasn't cold in November in San Diego of
San Diego
2001.
is a beautiful place. I went to grad
Yeah,
school there.
yeah.
So
And then
I know it pretty well.
yeah, absolutely. Like really sort of good, good weather throughout the year pretty much. And then yeah, I just went home to the UK and about a week and a half later, my friend who's also works in games was around my place, just outside London. And I said, I better call them because it's been a little bit. And then I accepted the job kind of on the spot on the phone and then came out 10 minutes later. I says, "I'm moving to California." He goes, "What the hell? I just left you for like 10 minutes and you're moving country." So I was like, yeah, I just said yes to it. So yeah, I moved out the following year once the visa went through, which Sony arranged. So that was June of 2002.
Huh. And you've worked on a number of games. You're in fact sort of the face of one of your older ones.
Yeah, I worked on a bunch of games of all different types of platforms, consoles, PC, handheld, all sorts of stuff. But yeah, we did a game called Croc, Legend of the Gobbos, on the PlayStation 1, Sega Saturn, and PC, which was released in August of '97, I believe, or September. It was one of the two. And I left the company after finishing the game. I decided to move on and take another job. That's how I ended up at PlayStation. And the game went to number one. And I thought to myself, oh, maybe I left at the wrong time. So you never know when you make something like what's going to be a success or not. So yeah, the game went to number one, excuse me. And it was interesting because I saw it do well. It got some pretty good reviews. There was a little bit of criticism over the controls and stuff, but in general, people loved it. They thought it was quaint and charming, colorful, a lot of fun. And it did pretty well. And it wasn't until many years later, sort of almost 2010, I would imagine, where I started getting people sort of reach out and saying, "Is there ever going to be a Croc remake or a remaster or something?" And I said, "I don't know. I don't know." I get asked that a lot, but and then it came out last year. Sorry, this year in April.
Mhm.
So came out for the modern consoles.
So it is available once again. You know,
Yes, and it looks nice. It's all like 4K, 60 frames per second. It looks real good. They've up-resed all the models and textures, so it looks smooth and sharp. And but it's the original game. You can dial back the retro features, so you can go back to like the old resolution, the old models. Make it look like sort of, I think it was like 320 by 240 on the PlayStation 1, and I think you can even like bring down the old controls to like the quirkier controls that got a little bit of negativity in the reviews, but
oh yeah,
we put some improved ones in there. So
yeah. I think I mentioned to you way back when I kind of worked briefly on one of the games for Intellivision. Right,
right.
yeah, the tennis game. Actually, a friend of mine named Gavin Claypool was developing that, and I helped him out with a little bit of it. Not much, and I didn't get paid for it, but
No,
if you have any of the old Intellivision cassettes sitting around and happen to have the tennis, I had a hand in that. You
that's awesome. That's awesome. What was your hand in it? What specifically did you do?
Um, I don't know. Gavin was working on shadow controls because trying to do, a three-dimensional simulation. I think he was the first one who developed the
Yeah.
ball with the shadow under it so that you could tell exactly where
Mhm.
it was. And I did a little bit of help in programming that with him.
That's
Um,
amazing. I love
but
that.
it was his. I mean, it's his idea, his baby. All I did was help just a little bit, and that's the extent of
Great.
my involvement in gaming
Yeah.
industry.
No, the
That kind of
Intellivision was a
gaming
classic.
industry.
Yeah, it was a classic console. I remember it back in the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what else are you working on in the game industry right now? Then we'll get into the acting part of it.
Sure. Yeah, so I worked on a number of games over the years. I pretty much haven't stopped making games the whole time. I went freelance for a while after losing my job at PlayStation, which is what led me into acting. But yeah, end of 2008, the Great Recession was kicking in. I sort of heard about it, but wasn't paying a whole lot of attention, to be honest with you. And then was part of a major, major layoff. They let go of about half the people at Sony and found myself without a job at the end of 2008, right before Christmas. And then thought, well, at that point, had 20 years experience. I thought, well, I'll find something else. And then didn't realize, how crazy it was out there. So I went freelance for a while. It sort of took a little bit to get it going, but I went freelance for a number of years. Then sort of took on some sort of in-office jobs for a little bit, about 5 years later. And then it eventually picked up to where I am now, where I'm at this job the last 10 years, which started off with Kabam making Marvel Strike Force and Avatar and stuff like that, then got acquired by a number of companies, all the way up to Scopely, where I'm at now. And the last game I worked on, Marvel Strike Force, which I came back to after Avatar Pandora Rising, which got cancelled, unfortunately, on the phones. But Marvel went out, Marvel Strike Force. And then the last almost 2 years now, I've been on Monopoly Go for the phones, which was a definitely a big hit. So I do the technical art on that. So I'm sort of working on a particular feature right now, a subsection of the game where it's called Adventure Club, and we're producing new versions of that and making sure that everything's looking how it should do and performing correctly and that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of art in the game. So it takes a lot of sort of looking at and checking and making sure everything's going in well.
So you're, in addition to being a gamer, you're something of an artist as well. Have you
Yeah.
have you ever thought of doing comic books?
Oh, I've it's funny because I've never really been much of a traditional artist. It's not that I don't like it. I super love it and respect it, but my real sort of experience of traditional art was always doodling and stuff when I was at school when I was sort of zoning out in class. But at the age of 11, I got my first computer, and around 12 or so, I don't remember the exact year, I didn't have a paint program for it. So I figured out how to write one. And I made it so the joystick moved the cursor around, and when you press the fire button, it would draw a line. It was a bit like an Etch-a-Sketch.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, I had no way of saving the program to cassette. So as soon as I had to reset my computer at the end of the day, it was all lost.
Oh
But
my
it was,
goodness.
yeah, but it was sort of my first foray into that. And then when I got the Amiga in my sort of, I think early teens, I think I was probably about 13 or something, or 12, 13. It was a massive jump in performance. And, you had floppy disks, the 3.5 inch ones. And I got a copy of Deluxe Paint on it and started doing that. That's how I ended up doing the artwork, the Madonna image and stuff like that. But it just was hugely empowering. So I think it was interesting because I think even at a young age, anything traditional, like traditional drawing or playing guitar, I very quickly transferred to playing keyboards, digital analog keyboards, and then also, because I write a lot of music, and then also painting digitally. And, I think at the age of 14 was the first time I did a 3D animation. I did it on Sculpt 4D on the Amiga. And I was a big fan of, and still am a big fan of the original Tron movie from the 80s. So I recreated a part of the movie. It was only about, 40 seconds long or something. I forget exactly how long it was, but it wasn't long. And did it in Sculpt 4D, which had no textures, it was just like flat colored 3D geometry. And then animated the whole sequence where the bikes they come off the grid and they're getting chased by the tanks.
Hmm.
And then it switches to like the tank with the cursor, like going left and right, trying to shoot the bikes, and rendered it out at 160 by 120 to fit it on a floppy disk. So it was very low resolution, but for me it was, really, really fun and cool to do. So to answer your question, yeah, I would love to be able to do something like that, but it just like at a very early age, I just kind of switched to digital and was really into like 3D art and sort of like pixel art and stuff. So that was kind of my route.
All right. Let's segue then. You said that you got into acting because you lost your job.
Kind of, yeah. I think if I hadn't lost the job, I probably would never have tried. So, yeah, what happened was December 3rd, 2008, lost my job. Came out of that, went home, thought, oh, wow, what do I do now? Because I'd moved country for this job, so everything that was sort of I was there for was because of PlayStation. And admittedly was a little terrified, a little freaked out at first. And started looking for work, putting resumes out there, putting feelers out, and nothing was happening. It was crazy. I had lots of experience, lots of credits, and all this cool stuff, but it just wasn't happening. It was kind of crazy. So after about 4 or 5 months, I think it was around March 2009, I thought, well, I'm getting a little bit tired of sending out resumes. Is there anything like I want to do as like a something to distract me and sort of keep me going, keep me sane, while I'm looking for jobs. And sort of years leading up to that, I would go to watch movies with my friends, the two British friends, quite often at the theater. And it was kind of this strange thing that happened where I'd be sort of sitting in the dark, and if I really connected with the movie and the characters, I would sort of sit there and like almost like emote the feelings and things that were going on. So I'd sort of sit there in the dark, sort of like, like imagining like that sort of thing going on. And it was quite unusual. But as a little kid, I'd done a nativity play that went horribly wrong. I got a terrible nickname for what happened. I'll tell you that in a second. But I did sort of poke my head into a drama class at 13, I think it was, at school, and all the kids were so confident, so, you know, just so good at what they were doing that I just was a very shy kid. So I, sat there for a few minutes in the back of the corner of the room and just snuck out. I just thought this is not for me. So when it fast forward all these years to like I was 36 when I got laid off, I thought, I wonder if it might be fun to try a class. And what I quickly told myself to sort of like give me a way out was if I'm no good at it, then maybe it'll help me with doing presentations. Because I do a
Mhm.
lot of like, presentations at work. Hey, we've got a new feature we're doing. And even though I'm confident in the subject matter, and what it is that I'm putting forward, it was quite, nerve-wracking, sort of staring at 20 faces all looking back at you, and doing this presentation. So I thought maybe it'll help with that. So I drove down to this class, and weirdly, I hadn't really paid attention to exactly where it was, but it was right around the corner from where I got laid off at PlayStation. And I had this very noticeable car. It was a bright yellow little sports car. And I pulled up and I saw co-workers that were still working there walking down the street. And I was like, oh no, if they see me going into this acting class, they're going to think I've lost my mind. So I quickly duck in there and went upstairs and to this second floor classroom that was in part of an office building. And I put my hand on the door handle and I was like, oh, what am I doing? Is this like an early midlife crisis or something? It's like I sort of got cold feet and I didn't go in and I left and I went back down and got in my car and drove off about half a mile to a mile. And then I pulled over and it sounds a little corny, but I sort of looked in the rearview mirror and I said, "You're the type that checks everything out. Go back." So I drove back there and I went in the class and then continued from there.
What was the first acting gig you got?
First acting gig was, well, the first sort of step into that foray was doing background. I did a couple of background gigs before I started doing actual, acting with lines. One was the very first thing was a Trivial Pursuit commercial. It was up in LA. I drove all the way up to LA from San Diego for I think $64 for 8 hours because it was $8 an hour at the time. And I uh, went there, and the whole thing was just completely foreign to me.
Hmm.
People with like equipment and cameras and lights, and it was in the backyard of a house there in LA, a sort of medium-sized house, and it had a pool at the back. And it was a little commercial where people are sat around the pool, in the pool, drinking, hanging out, stuff like that. And then there was I don't remember what happened in it, but there was some sort of comedic element. And I quickly befriended a girl there and said, like, I don't know what to do. And she's like, oh, well, just make sure you don't look at the camera and all this kind of stuff. And then they handed me a cup with water in it. And I just started drinking. I didn't realize it was a prop cup. And it had been sat there for a couple of hours and it was warm water with like dust in it. And I was like, oh, this water's kind of gross. She said, you're not supposed to drink here. What are you doing? So it was all like super new. I remember Googling like what is SAG-AFTRA and stuff like that. I had no idea. And yeah, so I did that first, and then I started sort of like figuring it out a little bit. Some people in class showed me what to do, and I quickly got an agent who was like a guy in San Diego who was sort of representing a couple of actors, but very nice guy. But it was kind of funny, sort of doing those early sort of like jobs and running out to do short films, student films, which is fantastic way to cut your teeth on acting, to get out there and do that stuff. But it was a lot of fun.
All righty. I have a similar story. It seems like I always do. Background got pulled out of it to play a pharmacist in a movie. I think it was called Flight of the Black Eagle or Flight of the Dark Eagle or something like that.
Oh,
The
that's
only
cool.
movie I've ever been in, right? I just went there to just to be a background character. And, hey, let's get him. So they just
Ah,
pulled me out of the background and put me into a pharmacy coat and had me interact with the lead actress in the
oh, that's
movie.
excellent. Did they give you lines or did you
No,
have to?
no lines, no lines. It
Okay.
wasn't even credited, right?
Yeah.
And I remember one of my nephews, sending me, phoning me, "Hey, were you in a movie?"
I think I saw you.
Yeah, because it was on TV, right? And he saw it and he called me up and, hey, that's Uncle Dennis, right? And called
Oh,
me
that's
up to
excellent.
verify it. So it was cool. Um, Movies you've been in. There was one series recently that people might know you from.
Yeah, Agatha All Along, the new Marvel series, came out last Halloween on Disney Plus. I play a character called the Doctor, who is a pretty scary, creepy guy. And it's a fairly small role, but it's quite juicy and intense. And it was interesting because working on it was, by the way, an amazing, incredible experience. We shot it a couple of years ago out in Atlanta, Georgia, and it was just so much fun. It was really was incredible. 2 days on set, and when the show came out, a year and a half after we shot it, uh, firstly you're sort of wondering like, did I make the cut and is it in there and everything, and you're sort of going through that kind of process. And then when it came out and all was good, it was all in there. It was interesting because I expected a few people to reach out and say, oh, it's like you said, I saw you in the thing, and that was pretty cool. But it's been absolutely bananas. I mean, the past year, and it's still going. I still have people reaching out, and the conventions like we met at, and people like discussing the Doctor and Jennifer Kale, who's played by Sashir Zameda, talking about it on Reddit and conversations. So it really has been quite amazing. The fans of the show and the Marvel fans are just absolutely incredible. They're so devoted to the MCU, and Agatha was well received and got like 3 Emmy nominations and things like that. So it really has been wonderful. It's been a great experience.
What other movies might people be aware of that you were in?
I did a pretty big movie called Hypochondriac, which was one of the South by Southwest Film Festival official selections.
Hmm.
And it starred Zach Villa, who's from American Horror Story 84 and many other shows. But he was very famous for that show because he played the real serial killer, Richard Ramirez, in American Horror Story 84, which was a very sort of 80s, like, Camp Lake kind of, sort of a horror themed thing. And I played alongside him as a character called the Wolf, which was really fascinating because it was sort of a creature role, although the character is literally a man in a wolf suit as opposed to the actor being a man in a wolf suit.
Mhm.
So the character is a man in a wolf suit. So you see the seams, you can see it's a costume, but there's a reason for that. When you watch the film, it is quite fascinating, the relationship of the wolf to Zach's character Will, and also the reason why the wolf is around and what sort of he depicts and mirrors of what's going on with Zach in the film. Um, Based on a sort of a true story of Addison Hyman, the writer, director, producer's life when he was younger, of what happened to him and sort of a breakdown that he went through, and it was an incredibly challenging role because I had some lines in it, but it was a lot of physicality. It was a lot of like sort of standing and sort of doing like unusual movements and sort of slinking down to all fours and crawling and, slitting throats and all sorts of crazy things. So, really, really fun, really creative and just invigorating. When I came home after shooting for several days, I just had that buzz of like, I want to do more of that. It was fun. But as far as like other stuff, I think the one of the shows that I did that I had a small role in, played a character called Oliver, is on the show Lodge 49 on AMC with Paul Giamatti, Wyatt Russell, Bruce Campbell, a whole bunch of people in it. And it was an extremely beloved show. Like the fan base just love it with so much support, some kind of rabid fan base. But the problem with the show was it was very hard to package what the show what the show's sort of highlights were and what was amazing and unique and original about it into like a minute and a half trailer. It was one of those shows that you have to kind of watch and it just sort of seeps into your soul and you're like, oh, I love this show. This I want to see what happens next because it was a very quirky, sort of charming show about ordinary people in an ordinary life in Long Beach, becoming involved in this sort of underground, sort of hidden, sort of fraternal society kind of thing where really unusual, weird things start happening. And it was fascinating. Ran for 2 seasons.
Uh, Alrighty. Um, Social media. You, I assume that you post things. Did you talk to people there?
Yeah, I wasn't really big into social media before I got into acting, I'll be honest. I think I had like about three people on Facebook just sharing barbecue pictures. But then when you get into acting, invariably you meet
People
sort of
start.
filmmakers
Yes.
and people, so you keep in touch. So yeah, I'm currently on most of the platforms. You can find me at Scott Butler Act, ScottButleract. And yeah, I post pretty regularly. I sort of put games and acting stuff on there and all sorts of fun. I try to have a bit of fun with it, not make it super serious, and show my sort of quirky, crazy side on there, and hopefully entertain people a little bit.
What's coming up? What can people look for from you down the road here?
Ooh, so I'm in talks with a few producers right now. So what's happened is with the show coming out with Agatha, a few people have been sort of in touch where I've been going to things, conventions and events in LA and stuff like that. And there's about three or four films that I'm in talks with, a couple of sci-fis, a new one, a vampire movie, and that one will be one of the lead roles and some potentially other stuff coming. It's just the industry's been a little bit slow. We've had, strikes and the whole IATSE stuff. So things are starting to pick up a little bit. I'm starting to see
That's good.
a little bit more stuff happening. But yeah, hopefully next year I'll be shooting at least one of those, hopefully, and then we'll be posting once I'm able to.
Well, it's forward. People should go out there and follow you. Um, Scott, I want to thank you for this. Um,
Thank you.
don't hang up after I stop recording. I want to chat with you about something else. But I do want to encourage people, if you like this interview, to hit the like button, subscribe, share it. Right? The only way that we can grow the heroic voice as a YouTube channel is by getting references from people who like this and want to share it with other people. Any last thoughts, Scott, before we sign off here?
No, I just, am thankful to the fan base of Agatha, and hopefully we'll have some sort of continuation, whether it be, a spin-off of the character. I know Sashir had said she'd like to revisit the backstory in the future in the MCU because clearly there's a lot more story there that hasn't been told yet.
Oh, yeah.
But even just for Agatha all along, even without my character, I'd love to see it continue. I mean, Jack Schaefer, Catherine Hahn, everyone that I met on the set were absolutely incredible, and I'd like to see more Agatha. So
Well,
we'll
I'm sure
see.
that Agatha fans would like to. There's a lot of backstory with that character out of the comics that I'm sure that they didn't really touch on in the show. So there's plenty of grist for the mill. All
That
righty.
is true. Yeah.
Scott, have a good weekend. Thank you. Um,
Thank you.
and hang on.